Some names echo across centuries like distant thunder, felt more than heard. Not because of their presence in history books, but because they awaken something ancient within us, something we often don't have words for. Hermes Trismegistus is one of those names, a name that exists outside of time, a whisper between cultures, a signature written across the cosmos. But who, or what, was Hermes Trismegistus? Was he a man? A myth? A god? A scribe of the stars? Or was he something far, more elusive, an archetype, a bridge, a living symbol, encoded with the mysteries of the universe? This journey begins not with a textbook, but with a question, not with facts, but with remembrance. Because Hermes cannot be understood, he must be experienced. Imagine, if you will, standing in the halls of an ancient temple, somewhere between Egypt and Greece, where the air itself hums with geometry. The stars above are not just lights, they are messages. The pillars around you are not merely stone, they are statements of cosmic law. In your hands you hold a scroll that glows faintly. Written on it, in a language your soul understands, but your mind resists. Are teachings older than empires? You are not there to worship. You are there to remember. And somewhere in the silence, he appears. The scribe, the guide, the messenger. Hermes, not walking toward you, but rising from within. You, Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great, master of alchemy, philosophy, and divine science. But what does that even mean? To understand Hermes, we must first understand the fusion that gave him birth. From the land of Egypt came Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, the moon, writing, mathematics, and sacred magic. Thoth was said to have authored thousands of scrolls, to have balanced the scales of judgment, and to have gifted humanity with speech and structure. From the realm of Greece came Hermes, swift-footed messenger of the gods, guardian of boundaries, patron of travelers, thieves, and alchemists alike. He moved between worlds, mortal and divine, carrying secrets and stories. And in the crucible of Alexandria, where East met West, where philosophy kissed myth, Thoth and Hermes merged into one transcendent being, Hermes Trismegistus. Figure so luminous, so multidimensional, he was revered as both a man of flesh and a mind of light. But what makes him thrice great? In some interpretations, it is said he mastered the three great disciplines: philosophy, the love and pursuit of wisdom; alchemy, the transformation of matter and the soul; theurgy, the knowledge and union with the divine. Others say the three represent the triad of body, soul, and spirit, and that Hermes had achieved harmony across all levels of being. But perhaps most powerfully, the name Trismegistus signals integration, the merging of opposites, the marriage of heaven and earth, logic and magic, masculine and feminine. To be Trismegistus is to be whole. Hermes didn't come to impose dogma. He came to reveal the hidden laws that govern not just the cosmos, but the self. And for that, he left behind teachings. Not commandments, but conversations. Not rules, but riddles. These are the Hermetic texts, a body of mystical writings compiled between the 2nd century BCE and the 3rd century CE, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, written as dialogues between the master and his disciples, often his son Tat or the Initiator Asclepius. These texts are poetic, cryptic, and drenched in metaphysical insight. They speak of the origin of the universe from divine mind, the illusion of separation, the ascent of the soul through the planetary spheres, and the ultimate union with the One. They do not demand belief. They invite awakening. This is the heart of Gnosis, not knowledge that is accumulated, but knowledge that is remembered, a truth so deep it feels familiar. Among these texts, one stands out in particular, small in size, immense in impact. The Emerald Tablet. In it are inscribed words that would echo through alchemical traditions, magical orders, and mystic philosophies for centuries. That which is above is like that which is below. and that which is below is like that which is above. This is not just poetic symmetry. It's a law of reality. What happens within mirrors what happens without. The soul and the cosmos are not separate. They are reflections. To study Hermes, then, is not to look outward, but inward. In this way, Hermes becomes more than a name. He becomes an archetype, the inner teacher, the guide at the crossroads, the initiator who offers no easy answers, but holds the lantern just long enough for you to see your own path. He appears in moments of transition, between one life phase and another. He speaks in symbols, dreams, synchronicities. He walks with those who walk between worlds, and in the great mystical traditions, from Kabbalah to Gnosticism, from alchemy to astrology, his imprint is everywhere. He is the magician of the tarot. He is Mercury, ruler of thought and communication. He is the serpent and the wings, entwined in sacred motion. So why does Hermes still matter? Because we are once again a world at a crossroads, between science and soul, between information and wisdom, between artificial intelligence and ancient remembrance. Hermes calls not for escape, but for integration, not for blind belief, but for awakened sight, not for control, but for inner alchemy. And that is what this series is about. Not to explain Hermes Trismegistus in a linear way, because he can't be, but to walk with him, symbol by symbol, teaching by teaching, layer by layer, to remember the part of ourselves that already knows, to light a candle in the temple of the soul, because Hermes Trismegistus may not have left a tomb, but he left keys, and those keys open doors, not to places but to states of being. In this first chapter, we'll explore his origins, his myth, his message, and his mystery. We'll ask the question not just, who was he, but what part of me is he still speaking through? So take a breath, enter the temple, let the silence speak. Hermes awaits. To understand Hermes Trismegistus, we must first go back, far back, to the origin of his name and the sacred union it represents. Because Hermes was not born from a single myth or a single culture. He is the product of a fusion, a symbolic, merging of two ancient deities, Thoth of Egypt and Hermes of Greece. Let us begin with Thoth. Known to the Egyptians as Jehuti, Thoth was the god of writing, time, the moon, language, and sacred measurement. He was the keeper of balance, the scribe of the gods, the inventor of hieroglyphs, and the master of Mayat, cosmic order. In ancient depictions, Thoth often appears with the head of an ibis, a bird associated with the rhythms of nature and the lunar cycles. Sometimes he takes the form of a baboon, another animal linked with lunar wisdom. It is said that Thoth authored thousands of scrolls, containing the secrets of the universe, the mechanics of the soul, and the structure of divine law. He was present at the weighing of the heart after death. He guided souls through the underworld. He represented the divine intellect, a mind in service to harmony. Now let us look to Hermes. To the Greeks, Hermes was the god of messages and communication, travel and transition boundaries and thresholds, magic and invention. He wore winged sandals. He carried the caduceus, the staff with two serpents intertwined. He moved between Olympus and earth, and even into the underworld without obstruction. Hermes was a trickster and a teacher, quick-witted, clever, and endlessly curious. He presided over markets, roads, dreams, and riddles. He was not confined to one realm. He belonged to all realms. So what happens when the lunar wisdom of Thoth merges with the mercurial genius of Hermes? You get something entirely new and entirely ancient. Hermes Trismegistus, a being who is at once the scribe and the speaker, the stillness of contemplation and the movement of insight, the law of nature and the inspiration of the soul. This fusion took place during the Hellenistic period, particularly in Alexandria, a cultural melting pot where Egyptian, Greek, Jewish, and Persian ideas met and transformed one another. In that sacred convergence, Hermes Trismegistus emerged as a figure who could speak to all traditions, because he embodied the essence beneath them. He was not just worshipped, he was studied. He was invoked in magical rites, cited in philosophical texts, and honored by mystics and emperors alike. And here's the mystery. There is no record of an actual man named Hermes Trismegistus walking the earth, no tomb, no birthplace, no bones, and yet his words live on, his symbols persist, his presence is felt. What does that tell us? That Hermes is not just a figure from the past. He is a living principle, a consciousness that speaks through multiple faces, in multiple languages, across multiple lifetimes. He is what appears when the rational and the intuitive finally meet, when the mind bows to the mystery, when the seeker becomes the scribe. In this sense, Hermes is born again every time we step into that space between knowing and unknowing, every time we dare to see the world as a book of symbols, waiting to be read by the soul. Hermes is not a god to be worshipped. He is a presence to be recognized, and so as we continue this journey, let us remember, we are not studying mythology, we are awakening memory, the memory of a time when wisdom was sacred, when knowledge was initiation, when symbols were alive, the memory of a name that echoes still, Hermes. Thoth, Trismegistus. 3. Names, one mystery, endless reflection. To understand why Hermes was called Trismegistus, the thrice great, we must go deeper. Because this title is not just honorary, it is initiatory. 3 is not a random number. In sacred traditions across the world, 3 represents completion. It is the number of synthesis, of unity born from polarity. Consider mind, body, spirit, birth, life, death, past, present, future. In Hermetic thought, this triadic structure appears everywhere, not just as a concept, but as a map for how consciousness unfolds. Hermes was said to have mastered the 3 great sciences: philosophy, the pursuit of wisdom; alchemy, the transmutation of matter and spirit; theurgy, the direct communion with the divine. To be Trismegistus is to have united the intellectual, the mystical, and the magical. It means the veil between worlds is no longer a barrier, but a doorway. In alchemical symbolism, the number 3 also corresponds to the 3 essential elements: sulfur, the soul or divine will mercury; the spirit or mind salt; the body or the manifested world. Hermes, in this view, is the one who brings them into harmony. He is the inner alchemist, the consciousness that purifies and refines until all things return to their source. But there is yet another layer to his title, one that whispers of deeper mystery. Some ancient sources say that Hermes was called thrice great because he had been reincarnated 3 times, once as a philosopher, once as a priest, and once as a king. Others suggest that he spoke the truth of the divine in 3 tongues: the language of the gods, the language of the stars, and the language of humanity. Still others believe the threefold greatness refers to his dominion over the 3 worlds: the Mandu, heavens above, the earthly realm, the underworld below. In every interpretation, the meaning is the same. Hermes has transcended separation. He holds the keys to all realms. He is the one who can stand in the center, the axis mundi, and draw connections between all things. And this is what makes Hermetic wisdom so powerful. It doesn't ask us to choose between science or spirit, intellect or intuition, logic or love. It invites us to weave them together. In the modern world, we are taught to separate, to compartmentalize. But Hermes teaches us to unify. He reminds us that the greatest transformations happen when opposites are brought into conscious relationship. That wisdom is not linear, it is spiral. And so, the name Trismegistus is more than a title. It is a vibration, a mantra, a reminder that within you lives the capacity to be philosopher, mystic, and magician, all at once, not in theory, in practice. When you meditate on truth, when you transmute your pain into power, when you listen for the voice of the divine in silence, you are walking the path of the thrice great. You are remembering what you already are, and Hermes is smiling. To know Hermes is not to memorize his stories. It is to feel the subtle pull of his teachings inside your own being. And nowhere does this inner pull speak louder than through the texts that bear his name. These are the Hermetic writings, sacred, dialogues collected and preserved not to inform but to awaken. The core of these teachings is known as the Corpus Hermeticum. These are not sermons. They are conversations, living exchanges between Hermes and his students, most often his son Tat or the seeker Asclepius. They begin not with conclusions, but with questions, with longing, with the ache of a soul that senses a higher truth and refuses to be satisfied with surface answers. This is the essence of Gnosis, not intellectual knowledge, but direct soul-level remembrance. The kind of knowing that doesn't come from outside, but is triggered from within, and the language of these texts reflects that. It is poetic, paradoxical, shifting, sometimes dizzying, because the truths they carry are not meant to be consumed quickly. They are meant to be contemplated, to be lived. One of the most profound ideas in these texts is that all of reality was born from divine mind, that everything, stars, thoughts, atoms, dreams, emerges from a single living intelligence. In one passage, Hermes says, "The all is one, and the one is all." That may sound abstract, but pause for a moment. What if everything you see, every person, every event, every experience, is not separate from you but somehow part of you? What if the universe is not a machine, but a mirror? These writings teach that the visible world is the shadow of the invisible, that behind every form lies a force, and that force is conscious. As human beings, we are not mere observers. We are participants. And the more we awaken to this truth, the more the world begins to speak to us in symbols, patterns, and synchronicities. This is the world Hermes describes, a world where spirit and matter are not two, but two sides of one sacred coin. One of the most powerful sections of the Corpus Hermeticum is known as the Divine Pimander. In it, Hermes receives a vision from the Nous, the divine mind, who shows him the structure of reality itself. He sees the birth of the universe from pure light. He sees souls descending into matter, forgetting their divine origin. And he sees the possibility of return, of remembering, through inner purification and alignment. In this vision, knowledge is not acquired. It is revealed. And revelation only comes when the heart is ready. Hermes does not offer dogma. He offers direction. He does not say, "Here is the truth." He says, "Look within, and you will see." Because the divine is not somewhere else. It is not in temples or scrolls or stars. It is within you. And the purpose of the Hermetic path is to awaken that divine spark, to fan it until it becomes a flame. This is not a religion. It is not a philosophy in the modern sense. It is a remembering, realigning, a returning to what has always been true, but often forgotten. And that is what makes these texts sacred, not because of who wrote them, but because of what they ignite in you. Hermes whispers to the part of you that already knows, to the part of you that has always been curious, always seeking, always sensing that there is more. And as you read or hear these ancient dialogues, you don't just learn. You remember. You remember that thought shapes reality, that what you focus on expands, that the soul is eternal, that love is the highest law, and slowly, subtly, a shift begins. You start to see meaning where there was only randomness. You start to feel connection where there was once isolation. You start to hear the world speak, not in words, but in symbols. You begin to walk through life as if every moment is an initiation, And that is what the Hermetic texts are. They are initiations in disguise. They test your patience. They challenge your intellect. They confront your ego. But they also lift the veil. And once the veil is lifted, you can't go back to sleep. You see the world differently. You see yourself differently. And you realize Hermes was never outside of you. He was always the voice within, calling you, guiding you, waiting for you to answer, and now you have. There is a reason Hermes appears again and again, across cultures, across symbols, across centuries. It is because Hermes is more than a myth or a memory. He is an archetype, a pattern of consciousness that awakens when the soul is ready to evolve. In every great spiritual tradition, there is a figure who does not offer comfort but initiation. A figure who arrives not to answer your questions but to unmake them. Hermes is that figure. He is the sage who stands at the threshold, the guardian of the door between the known and the unknown. He is the voice that whispers when you are standing on the edge of transformation, encouraging you to step forward, even though you can't yet see where your foot will land. He does not push you. He invites you. And that invitation is always gentle, but firm. It comes when the old way of being no longer fits, when the stories you've told yourself start to crumble, when the world feels both more mysterious and more alive than ever before. This is the beginning of initiation. And Hermes is the archetype of the initiator. He is the one who hands you the mirror but doesn't tell you what to see. He is the one who offers you the riddle, but doesn't give you the answer. He is the one who reminds you, the truth is not something you are told. It is something you become. In ancient mystery schools, in Egypt, in Greece, in the temples of Isis, Eleusis, and beyond, there was always a rite of passage, a symbolic death, a descent into the unknown, and when the initiate emerged, they were not the same. What died was the false self. What was born was a soul aware of its own divine origin. Hermes represents that passage. He is the one who leads you into the dark, not to harm you but to strip away illusion. He teaches through paradox. He teaches through silence. He teaches through symbols that only begin to reveal themselves once you stop trying to control them. In this way, he is not just a teacher, he is the inner guide, the quiet, knowing presence that grows stronger the more you trust it. You may not hear him as a voice. You may feel him as intuition, as clarity in chaos, as the sudden insight that feels older than you are. This is the power of archetypes. They live inside us. They awaken when conditions are right. And once they do, they change how we see everything. Hermes, as the initiating sage, does not show up in ordinary times. He appears when a soul is ripe for transformation, and you'll know it by the symptoms: disillusionment, restlessness, a sense that the life you're living is not the one you came here to live. These are not signs of failure. They are signs that Hermes is near. Because before initiation, there is always confusion. Before awakening, there is always darkness. The modern world avoids this darkness. It sells quick fixes, instant enlightenment. One-size-fits-all answers. Hermes offers none of these. He offers something harder, something better. He offers truth, but not the kind you can memorize, the kind you must embody. And the first step is surrender. Surrendering the illusion that you already know, that you're in control. That meaning comes from outside. Hermes gently unravels all of that. Not to punish you, but to free you, and once you are emptied, something new can begin. This is the sacred function of the archetype, to guide us through transformation that is real, not performative, to initiate us into wisdom that cannot be taught, only lived. That is why Hermes appears in dreams, why his symbols appear in art, in architecture, in the tarot, why his energy shows up in moments of profound change. He is the messenger, the guide, the magician, the trickster, the midwife of awakening. He holds all of these roles because awakening is not linear, it is not safe, it is not predictable, it is wild, it is sacred, it is demanding, and it requires us to let go of who we think we are, so we can become who we truly are. That is the invitation Hermes offers, to step beyond belief and into knowing, to move beyond identity and into essence, to pass through the fire and come out gold. You may not recognize him when he arrives. You may feel only the unraveling, the disruption, the loss. But in time, you will see. It was always him, the voice behind the silence, the question behind the doubt, the path hidden in the eye. Chaos, Hermes, the archetype of the sacred guide. Always waiting, always present, always ready. When you are. Ideas do not die. They transform, they travel, they disguise themselves in new languages, new rituals, new symbols, but the essence remains, and so it is with the legacy of Hermes Trismegistus. Though the temples of Egypt fell, though the scrolls of Alexandria burned, though centuries of dogma tried to silence the inner path, the Hermetic flame was never extinguished. It simply moved underground, hidden within secret orders, woven into the fabric of Western esotericism, echoed in the whispers of mystics, magicians, philosophers, and scientists who dared to see beyond the veil. Because once the Hermetic current was born, it could not be undone. During the Renaissance, a time of rediscovery, of light returning to darkened minds, the writings attributed to Hermes were rediscovered, translated, revered. One man in particular, Marsilio Ficino, translated the Corpus Hermeticum into Latin under the patronage of Cosimo de' Medici. For a time, these texts were held as ancient wisdom, even predating Moses. To the thinkers of the Renaissance, Hermes was not a relic. He was a revealer. Giordano Bruno, burned at the stake, spoke of infinite worlds, each pulsing with divine presence. Paracelsus, the father of holistic medicine, saw spirit in the body, soul in the plant, intelligence in the mineral. Even Isaac Newton, known for gravity and calculus, spent years immersed in alchemical and hermetic studies, trying to decode the language of God hidden in creation. What did they see in Hermes? A bridge between science and spirit, between outer discovery and inner realization, between the precision of intellect and the mystery of intuition. In the age of mechanization, Hermes reminded them, the world is not a machine, it is a mirror, and behind every mirror is a mind, a soul, a hidden order waiting to be felt, not just analyzed. As Christianity spread, some Hermetic ideas were preserved within mystical branches. Christian Kabbalists saw Hermes as aligned with the wisdom of Solomon. Rosicrucians blended Hermetic, alchemical, and Christian symbology. Freemasons echoed Hermetic architecture in their lodges and rituals, even in the tarot, which emerged in the late Middle Ages as both game and glyph. The figure of the magician, the hermit, the high priestess, all carry Hermetic threads. But more than structures and schools, Hermeticism influenced a way of seeing, a way of approaching the world not as dead matter, but as animated symbol, not as chaos, but as coded design. It taught that the divine is not elsewhere. It is immanent, that truth is not revealed by force, but by alignment, that the soul does not need saving, it needs remembering. This view was dangerous. It threatened authority. It empowered the individual. And so for centuries it was kept hidden, not because it was dark, but because the world was not ready for its light. Yet it endured, passed hand to hand, whispered in libraries, monasteries, gardens, and secret societies, because the soul of Hermes cannot be confined, and today that current flows again. not only in mystics and seeker, but in artists, scientists, therapists, and visionaries who sense that the world is more than what we've been told, who feel that beneath the noise of modern life, something ancient is calling, and that call is hermetic, a call to synthesis, to balance, to wholeness. It is the same call that echoed through the pyramids, that shimmered in Greek temples, that burned in alchemical labs, and now it whispers in you. The legacy of Hermes is not in museums. It is in the way you choose to see meaning in symbols, to seek harmony in duality, to listen to your own soul as a sacred voice. This is what it means to walk the Hermetic path, not to copy the past, but to live its essence here now, in your thoughts, your words, your presence. Because the Hermetic flame was never meant to remain hidden. It was meant to be passed on from seeker to seeker, from soul to soul. And now, it is yours to carry. There is a language older than words, a way of knowing that bypasses the logical mind and speaks directly to the soul. It is the language of symbols, and it is the language Hermes speaks. In Hermeticism, symbols are not merely poetic devices or aesthetic flourishes. They are bridges, keys, invitations. Each one opens a portal into deeper dimensions of reality, not just outer reality, but inner. This is why the Hermetic teachings are filled with imagery: the serpent and the staff, the circle and the triangle, the sun and the moon, the winged figure at the threshold. These are not abstract icons. They are living mirrors. They reflect back to you what words cannot hold. To understand Hermetic wisdom, you must begin to think symbolically, to feel into the deeper layers of meaning hidden beneath the surface of things. Because in this tradition, every event, every form, every moment is pregnant with significance. As above, so below. This phrase itself is a symbol, a glyph, a cosmic equation. It is not meant to be deciphered like a riddle. It is meant to be lived, embodied as a perspective. This is how Hermes teaches. Not by instruction, but by activation. He does not hand you the answers. He places the symbol before you and waits, because a true symbol does not tell you what to think. It initiates a process, a spiral of reflection, a confrontation with your own assumptions, a loosening of rigid perception. The rational mind seeks clarity, control, and certainty. But symbols dwell in mystery. They are fertile, open-ended, and multi-layered. They do not flatten reality. They deepen it. To walk the Hermetic path, then, is to cultivate symbolic sight, to look at a feather and sense flight and freedom and divine timing, to gaze upon a snake and perceive healing, rebirth, and the shedding of what no longer serves, to dream of water and know you are being called to the unconscious, to the feminine, to flow. This is not fantasy. It is a deeper realism, one that includes the interior, the intuitive, the invisible. The world, Hermes teaches, is not dead matter. It is a living manuscript, and we are meant to read it, not only with our eyes, but with our spirit. This kind of reading is not fast, it is not efficient, it is sacred. In the ancient mystery traditions, initiates were trained in this symbolic literacy. They would spend months, even years, contemplating a single image, meditating on its layers, letting it transform them from within. Because symbols are not there to entertain you, they are there to change you. This is why sacred art, alchemical manuscripts, illuminated scrolls, mandalas, and astrological diagrams hold such enduring power. They are encoded with truth that cannot be explained, only experienced. In modern times, we are conditioned to seek literal answers, but Hermes invites us to sit in the ambiguity, to rest in the unknown, to trust the symbol, and as we do, something ancient awakens in us, a remembrance, a resonance, a recognition that the world is not random. It is radiant, and we are not separate from it. We are participants in its unfolding. To see symbolically is to begin to hear the hum beneath appearances, to sense the soul within the shape, to move through life as if each moment is speaking to you, not in noise but in code. The more you practice, the clearer it becomes. The synchronicities intensify, the dreams sharpen, the inner voice grows stronger, and you realize Hermes has been speaking all along through signs, through patterns, through images that visit you in quiet moments and refuse to leave. And now you're beginning to understand, not with your mind alone, but with your whole being. Because in Hermeticism, the symbol is not a decoration, it is a doorway. And once you walk through it, you are not the same. What is alchemy, really? Most of us know the legend. Turning base metals into gold, discovering the philosopher's stone, seeking the elixir of eternal life. These stories have captivated imaginations for centuries. But the deeper alchemists, those who walked the Hermetic path, knew something more profound, that the true great work is not done in a laboratory, it is done in the soul. Inner alchemy is not about transforming substances, it is about transforming the self. And Hermes, as the archetypal alchemist, invites us into this sacred process. In Hermetic terms, alchemy is the science of transmutation, but not just of lead into gold, of ignorance into wisdom, pain into power, ego into essence. It is the recognition that everything in nature, and within us, is in a state of becoming. Nothing is fixed, everything can evolve. And so the alchemist becomes the artist of their own soul. The operations of alchemy, calcination, dissolution, separation, conjunction, fermentation, distillation, coagulation, are not just physical steps. They are mirrors of the inner journey. Calcination, the burning of false identity. Dissolution, the melting of rigid structures and illusions. Separation, the discernment between what is essential and what is not. Conjunction, the marriage of opposites within the psyche. Fermentation, the spark of inner awakening. Distillation, the refinement of clarity and insight. Coagulation, the embodiment of the awakened self. This is not metaphor, it is map. And Hermes is the one who hands you that map, not to follow blindly, but to feel your way through. He does not promise ease. He promises transformation, and transformation requires fire. Not the fire that destroys, but the fire that purifies. In inner alchemy, you are both the crucible and the flame. You must be willing to hold your contradictions, to confront your shadows, to allow the parts of you that no longer serve to burn away, so something more authentic can emerge. This process is not linear, it is spiral. It moves in cycles, and it asks for your full participation. Hermes reminds us that true change does not come from escaping difficulty. It comes from entering it consciously, from asking, what is this pain here to teach me? What part of me is ready to evolve? What truth have I been avoiding? And then, listening. The alchemist listens deeply, not just to the outer world but to the inner voice, to the subtle movements of the soul. This is where gold is born, not in the denial of darkness, but in the sacred tension between what has been and what is becoming. To walk the path of inner alchemy is to stop outsourcing your transformation, to stop waiting for someone or something to save you. It is to become the vessel of your own rebirth. Hermes guides you not with answers, but with presence. Here is the silent witness as you do the work, the steady flame that reminds you, this pain is not punishment. This confusion is not failure. This breakdown is not the end. It is the beginning of a new configuration, a new frequency, a new level of consciousness. Alchemy teaches that lead is not the enemy of gold, it is its potential, and so are you. All the parts of you that feel heavy, dense, resistant, they are not obstacles, they are raw material, waiting to be worked, to be seen, to be loved into transformation. This is the real philosopher's stone, not a magical object, but a way of being. a consciousness that sees everything and even suffering as part of the sacred process and the elixir of life. It is not immortality of the body, it is the vitality of a soul that is awake. To walk this path is not to become someone else, it is to remember who you have always been. Beneath the conditioning, beneath the noise, beneath the masks, it is to refine your perception until you see clearly. It is to heal your heart until you love deeply. It is to align your actions until you live truly. This is the alchemy of Hermes. Not ancient superstition, but eternal invitation to become gold, not by adding anything, but by uncovering what was always shining beneath the surface, and when you do, you don't just change your life, you change the world. Where is Hermes? Not just in myth, not just in temples long forgotten or scrolls buried in the sands of Alexandria. Hermes is here, now, not as a person, but as a presence, not as a doctrine, but as a current of consciousness. To those who walk the inner path, Hermes does not appear in robes of light or with thunder in his voice. He appears in quiet moments, in questions that won't leave you alone, in the patterns that start to form when you're finally ready to look. He comes as a whisper, not outside but within. Hermes is not the one who gives you the path. He is the one who reveals that the path has always been inside you. We often look outward for guidance, to books, to teachers, to systems. And while these can be helpful, Hermes reminds us that the most profound teacher you will ever know lives in your own silence. He is the archetype of the inner guide, the voice of deep intuition, sacred discernment, and timeless knowing. He doesn't speak in commands. He speaks in symbols and resonance, in a feeling you can't shake. He is the feeling of being gently but firmly pulled toward truth. And sometimes, that truth dismantles you. Because Hermes is not here to comfort the ego. He is here to liberate the soul, and liberation is rarely comfortable. He guides you into the liminal, into the space between what was and what will be. And in that space, the old forms dissolve, the old certainties collapse, but something new begins to stir. The inner guide does not provide a map. He lights the lamp. He invites you to walk, step by step, into your own unfolding. And in that walk, you begin to hear the voice of Hermes in your own thoughts, not as an outside authority, but as your own higher wisdom, your own soul's knowing. That sudden flash of insight that cuts through confusion, that's Hermes. That dream you can't shake, that seems to carry a message, that's Hermes. That moment when time stands still and you feel connected to everything, that's Hermes. He is the guide behind the guide, the intelligence behind synchronicity, the architect of inner awakening. And here's the paradox. The more you externalize him, the further he feels. The more you turn inward, the louder he speaks. Not in words, but in clarity, in alignment, in the quiet confidence that rises when you are living in truth. Hermes teaches that the divine is not distant, it is intimate. It speaks through your breath, your body, your longing. And when you honor that, when you listen, not just with your ears, but with your being, you begin to walk differently. You begin to trust, not in certainty but in mystery, not in perfection, but in presence. Because the path of Hermes is not about arriving, it's about awakening. Awakening to the truth that you are not separate from the cosmos. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are remembering. Remembering that the sacred is not somewhere else. It is here, now. And you are not alone on this path. You are guided, not from above, but from within. Hermes lives in the part of you that refuses to settle for illusion, that aches for what is real, that seeks not escape, but embodiment. He lives in your courage to question, in your willingness to listen, in your devotion to walk the invisible path with open eyes. So if you've ever felt like there's something calling you, something ancient, gentle and wise. That is Hermes, not as myth, but as mirror. Reflecting back to you the guide you already are and reminding you, you don't need to be perfect. You only need to be present. You don't need all the answers. You only need to keep asking the right questions, and you don't need to find the way, because the way is finding you. So now we arrive, not at an end, but at a threshold. We've walked together through the mystery of Hermes Trismegistus, through his myth and message, through the fusion of gods, the voice of symbols, the fire of inner alchemy, and the stillness of the inner guide. And yet, this is only the beginning, because to know Hermes is not to gather facts. It is to awaken a frequency, a vibration that hums in the space between your thoughts, that stirs when you sit in silence, that rises when you dare to live with depth. Hermes is not a destination. He is a doorway, and you've just stepped through. The world around you may look the same, but if you've truly listened, something inside you has shifted. You're seeing more, feeling more, remembering more. Not because you were taught, but because something ancient within you was activated. This is the Hermetic path, a path of remembrance, of reintegration, of resacralizing, a world that has forgotten how to speak the language of the soul. You are now part of a lineage, not of blood, but of light, the light that has passed from seeker to seeker, whispered behind temple walls, encoded in symbols, carried in silence, and now it lives in you. But there is more. In this first part, we have only laid the foundation. What did Hermes actually teach? What are the laws, the principles, that govern the seen and the unseen? In part 2 of this series, we will step into the sacred structure left by Hermes, the 7 Hermetic principles, not as abstract theories, but as keys to transformation. Each one a lens, a tool, a compass for living in alignment with truth. Because when you begin to live these principles, not just understand them, but embody them, the world begins to reveal itself to you in ways you never imagined. You begin to see the hidden architecture behind events, the secret order behind chaos, the unity beneath apparent duality, and suddenly, you're no longer a spectator, you're a co-creator. So take this moment, breathe, feel what has awakened in you. You are not who you were when you began this journey, and that perhaps is the greatest teaching Hermes offers, that we are not fixed, we are not final, we are alchemical beings, always becoming. So stay close to the mystery, let the symbols speak, let the silence guide, and when you're ready, I'll meet you in Part 2, where the teachings of Hermes begin to unfold, one principle at a time. Until then, keep walking, keep remembering, and above all, keep listening, because Hermes is still speaking, always has been. The question is, are you ready to hear?